Over the past few days, one phrase has been repeated so often that if you hear it in no times, you may start to wonder whether the entire world lecture, the entire catchphrase is a Trump's motto piece. It sounds soothing. It sounds noble-worthy. It sounds human. And to be fair, Donald Trump himself has essentially said as much. Why literally agreed. Stunning audiences worldwide after it emerged that he had sent a personal message to Norway's Prime Minister suggesting that because no witnesses worldwide have choose not to award him the Nobel Peace Prize, he no longer felt obligated to think purely in terms of peace. From now on, he would think about what was good for the United States. And what, according to him, is good for the United States is simple. The world cannot be secure unless America has complete and total control of Greenland. If that sentence made you paid, congratulations, your sense of reality is still intact. Because many people may have naively assumed that Trump has always prioritized American interests above all else, any waiver of tariffs, threats, or the constant implication that allies exist mainly to be pressured. But apparently, that was only the warm-up. Now the gloves are coming off. Yet what is truly interesting is that when people talk about Trump's border feast, they are not really talking about it facing any conventional sense. What is being described looks far more like a reimagined version of the United Nations, surreal by a single author when the cautiously removes the smaller mentioned thoughtfully removes smaller, asking questions, or worse, getting in the way. Originally, the concept of a port of peace was introduced as part of the Gaza Peace Initiative, tested with reversing the later stage with the Zavichamming, Hamas-Ningisming, Hamas-Nimages Vivakes, Zich. On paper, at least, this died not treacherous. But concepts have a habit of evolving in very particular ways when placed in the hands of the Trump administration. The charter that has recently emerged does not even clearly mention Gaza anymore. Instead, the Bond of Peace is described as an international organization dedicated to promoting stability, restoring dependable and lawful governance, and securing enduring peace in regions affected or threatened by conflict. Stability, dependability, respect for lawful governance. All qualities Donald Trump is famously associated with. The charter goes on to argue that durable peace requires pragmatic judgment, common sense solutions, and the courage to depart from institutions and pro-justice. Translated into plain language, this means existing global institutions do not work, so they should be replaced by something smaller, more flexible, and above all, something controlled by Trump himself thanks to. And yes, just as you might expect, the bot will be tightly controlled by Trump, who will have the authority to appoint or remove member states. Likely that will. Countries will serve a 3-year term unless they contribute over $1 billion within the first year of operations. Or $1 billion for peace. What is the money for? Peace, obviously. And who decides how it is spent? Also Trump. If you feel uncomfortable with that, perhaps you should ask yourself whether you are opposed to peace. Alongside the main board, there will be an advisory group featuring familiar figures from the world of political backstage management, people who reliably build every year, visioning these appreciating strategic writings. But real power lies with the main board itself, composed exclusively of heads of state. Some leaders are said to be considering partisanship, and it raises an obvious question. Is this something you will one day need to explain or even apologize for, having been part of? And if you think this story cannot get any stronger, consider the next detail. Trump has reportedly invited Russia's president to join the Board of Peace as well. The justification is unsurprising. Trump believes Russia simply wants peace, or at least a portion of peace, depending on how flexibly one defines the term. More intriguingly, Russia has expressed support for Trump's claim over Greenland. Suddenly, everything clicks together, despite Trump previously insisting they sting in the face Greenland precisely to prevent Russia from taking it. It is a complicated world, but a perfectly circular logic. Russia has said it is studying the proposal carefully, while other countries are reported to have received invitations as well. All of this is unfolding as Trump seeks a dramatic signing ceremony in Davos, positioning himself as a global architect of peace, perhaps just hours after lecturing the Muir, but 90s him vision for a tolerance for a fairer world. A world that coincidentally becomes fairer as American control expands. The irony is hard to miss. Many of the same voices they once wondered about global forums intense secret movements now appear remit now the mu chafidja remarkably damus churcher where power is more centralist, injury cuts the riser. And captability is largely a matter of personal trust. And this is only the beginning of the story. If the idea of a self-appointed global peace board already feels unsettling, the European region to it makes the picture even stranger. Because while this new structure is being floated, Europe is still trying to tide you whether what it is experiencing is a misunderstanding, a temporary outburst, or a fundamental shift in how power is systemized. Publicly, European leaders continue to speak the language of calm reason and dialogue. They insist that their goal is not confrontation, not escalation, but stability and cooperation. Privately, however, the mood is far less serene. The central Zimamai symbol, how you respond when the most credible security is no longer an external instrument fastly. Official statements avoid saying this out loud, but the actions tell a different story. Military advisors are sent to Greenland. Troop deployments are quietly reinforced. Exercises are extended not for days or weeks, but for years. And yet, every sentence spoken into a microphone is carefully wrapped in diplomatic cotton, assuring everyone that this is not meant to provoke and this is not meant to provoke anyone. This careful performance creates a surreal disconnect between reality and rhetoric. On the one hand, European governments are clearly preparing for a scenario may consider serious enough to warrant concrete military planning. On the other, they continue to pretend that the entire situation is a matter of the mind, a problem of interpretation. The implication is that if only the right words are chosen, if only the right assurances are given, the problem will resolve itself. This is not deterrence. This is hope masquerading as strategy. Some leaders have positioned themselves as special intermediaries, the so-called whisperers who believe they can manage Trumpers days tongue with nature, Trump through personal performing. Tariffs are described as mystic reader, tantrum. Military deployments are framed as administrative misunderstanding stem spiver, tan defensive response. The assumption behind all of this is that Trump can be reasoned with, the typically seeks win-win outcomes. The assumption picks the me aversive move as merely a matrix of tick too far. But this assumption runs directly into a wall of observable behavior. Trump does not believe in win-win agreements. He has said so repeatedly. His worldview is transactional and zero-sum. Someone wins, someone loses. And in that framework, concessions are not invitations to dialogues, they are confirmations of weakness. The more Europe bends over backshoulder to appear non-hostile, the more it reinforces the perception that resistance will be minimal. This is where the Greenland issue becomes symbolic rather than purely geographic. Greenland is not just the territory rich in resources or strategically positioned in the Arctic. It is a test case. A question posed to Europe in real time. Do your trees mean what they say, or are they merely decorative? Your collective defense obligations exist in practice, or surely on paper. If an uninvited takeover by a powerful leader is met with polite expressions of consent and endless calls for dialogue, thank you, we in the set. The uncomfortable truth is that Europe knows this. You can see it in the tension between what leaders say and what the governments do. You can see in the hedging language, the careful avoidance of red lines, the reluctance to name the threat explicitly. No one wants to be the first to say out loud that this is no longer about misunderstanding, but out caution. And yet, that is precisely what it is. Economic pressure through tariffs, political pressure through public statements, and strategic pressure through military ambiguity are thought of a single single. The response so far has been fragmented. Some countries emphasize dialogue at any cost. Others quickly prepare for escalation while publicly denying its likelihood. And through it all, the underlying fear remains unspoken that standing up too firmly might provoke retaliation, while standing down too softly might invite more demands. This paralysis is not accidental. It is the product of years spent assuming that the transatlantic relationship was fundamentally stable, that simple the feast we know simply wide would not be crossed. That assumption is now collapsing, and the collapse is messy. Greenland, in this sense, is less about the Arctic and more about credibility. It forces Europe to confront a question it has avoided for decades. What you when the guarantor of your security becomes the source of your insecurity. The longer that question goes unanswered, the more the answer is effectively given by default. Undefault answers in geopolitics tend to favor the actor most wanting to push, not the one most eager to reassure. At this point, it becomes clear that the debate of peace is not really about peace at all. At least not in the way ordinary people understand the word. It is about control, leverage, and the rebranding of dominance as stability. The language is always the same: lawful governance, dependable order, enduring peace. Those words are not meaningless, but they are frequently used as packaging. Pay order of a glove pulled over a metal fist. Because if you strip the rick away, the mechanism is remarkably simple. You create an institution that sounds morally elevated. You set a price tag for membership that conveniently filters out anyone without serious capital. You reserve the power to appoint and remove members based on your preferences, not on a neutral process. You define peacebuilding in a way that allows intervention almost anywhere. And then you call it nimble and effective. The result is not a multilateral system. It is a club. A club with one chairman and a membership fee that functions like tribute. That is why the structure matters more than the headline. Even if this board never fully materializes, the logic behind it is already reshaping behavior. It signals a worldview in which legitimacy is no longer derived from broad consensus, but from proximity to power. It suggests a future in which the old international architecture is treated as an obstacle, and new architectures are built to bypass it. Not because they are morally superior, but because they are easier to control. And this is where Greenland fits in again, not as a random obsession, but as a strategic proof of concept. If you can normalize the idea that United States may require complete and total control of a trefferthy that belongs to univerthings the lay, then overthings the grounds near the priest in this the prize. Greenland is the demonstration that the rules can be rewritten, and that objections can be drowned out by sheer capability. Notice how the rhetoric around Greenland functions. It is presented as a security necessity, a defensive measure, a regional step to prevent someone else from taking. But simultaneously, the same someone else is treated as a potential partner, even a candidate for a seat at the table. This contradiction is not a bug, it is a feature. Contradictions create confusion, and confusion creates hesitation. Hesitation creates time creates openings. That is how coercion works in modern geopolitics. It is not always tanks rolling in on day one. It is tariffs, threats, ambiguity, and the slow erosion of certainty until resistance feels riskier than submission. This is why Europe's obsession with moderation, dialogue, and not provoking inwin is so dangerous. Moderation is valuable when both sides share a baseline respect for the rules. But when one side treats rules as optional, moderation becomes a tool for the aggressor. It buys freedom of movement while the other side debates tone. It creates an environment where reasonable becomes synonymous with evasive, and the deeper issue is psychological. Europe is trying to process something it has been trained for decades not to see. The possibility to do that to the United States might actually neuer, like the S-Ligas news, Motbar. Tirk is a cultural reflex to interpret American pressure as bargaining, not as a claim. Theories are belief that everything ultimately ends in a negotiated compromise. But what if the negotiation itself is the weapon? What if the constant demand for dialogue is simply a way to keep the other side talking while the crown shifts underneath them? This is where the abilities dynamic becomes unavoidable. Everyone learns the basic lesson as a child: if you give a bully what to when to avoid conflict, you do not end conflict. You teach the bully a strategy. You teach them that pressure works. Now scale that up to the level of states, treaties, and economies. A tariff here, a threat there, a sudden announcement that a territory is necessary for security, of warning that retaliation would be unwise. The pattern is not random. It is conditioning. The world is being trained to accept the American demands come first, and that resistance will be punished periodically, either economically before it is penitential. The bond of peace then functions as the moral cover for this approach. It gives a narrative framework that can be used to justify intervention. We are not expanding, we are stabilizing. We are not coercing, we are ensuring lawful governance. We are not buying influence, we are funding peace. And if you are against it, well, you must be against peace. Test the trick. It flips the moral burden onto the target. It forces opponents to argue not only about power, busy do's. In practice, this is how empires have always spoken about themselves. The vocabulary changes. The logic does not. The most unsettling part of all of this is how quickly the absurd becomes normalized. That is what makes it feel like a global tragedy with a louder track. A boy of peace with $1 billion entry fee. A peace architecture tried infinitely by one man. A security argument for taking Greenland that somehow exists alongside invitations to the very roles the argument claims to fear. European governments quickly deploying force while publicly insisting it's all a misunderstanding. Leaders speaking about win-win agreements while the other side openly prefers win-lose. And ordinary people watching this unfold like it's a bizarre reality show where each episode escalates the skeletons the stakes in name, not from enough format everyone. But it is the normal. It is a transition phase. The old assumptions are collapsing and new ones are forming unevenly at different speeds in different capitals. Some are still clinging to the hope that calm reason will restore the order. Others are slowly accepting that the old order is already gone. And that acceptance comes with ugly implications that security may have to be defended against the very structures that once guaranteed it's guaranteed. Zit the lickentid on mikt me thingamist. Tit the resumes and thingamist. To nuvenidted of venedes, wonder vinfisnit. Zin to wet knowing well bun hates. Tanalis can become leverage points, and that institutions built on consensus can be replaced by institutions built on calmness. So yes, this could get messy. And yes, it will probably get spibbered. But that is precisely why it matters. Because the world is learning, in real time, that the most dangerous moments are not always the dramatic ones. Sometimes the most dangerous moments are the ones that era of rap in polished language, staged at glamorous summits, amidst the midst moments.